For those of you who don't know, Meagan Hazlewood has had, I think it's fair to call an affliction with the crop circle phenomenon. And like quite a few people, to the extent that she ventured to make that journey across to the UK, and part of the advertising that you would have seen or may have seen on our website would have been one of the first times I actually saw an image of Meagan sitting in the middle of a crop circle, and that's to the extent that she takes her work. However, there was another person, Stephen Oxley, who unfortunately couldn't be here this evening, but you've got some of his works here on hand, so other than meeting him in person, you won't miss out on any of that material. Essentially, everyone's got a different idea about crop circles, why, wherefore, and so on. Yes, there are hoaxes, etc. However, there's a lot of scientific needling to have a look at some of the more standout cases. But I'll let Meagan Hazlewood tell you all about it.
Thank you very much, Don and Lorraine, for having me here again. It's a real pleasure to be here. And thank you very much for coming, and especially for all the people who've come a long way. For those who are familiar with what crop circles are, you would be aware that it's actually been scientifically proven that hoaxing is not the answer to the phenomenon. Up on the board, you might want to take a photo if you're interested in doing a little bit of your own scratching around for information. www.crop circle connector is the website where all crop circles are archived since crop circles they started archiving them in the late 70s, early 80s. The real gift in the crop circles is how they speak to each individual, because the crop circles themselves are a multi-dimensional phenomenon and they are speaking to us as multi-dimensional beings. So are you with me on that? We are multi-dimensional beings. And within the phenomenon, there is a characteristic whereby there's an interactiveness with the consciousness behind the crop circle makers and human consciousness, whereby casual remarks have been made, for instance, in a crop circle, and there have been famous, well-documented examples where a journalist was speaking with a researcher in the crop circles, and he said, "Gee, with the growing complexity of crop circles, I wonder when we'll start getting fractals." And the very next crop circle for that year was the first fractal, and it was the Mandelbrot fractal set. Are any of you familiar with fractal geometry? It's very complex geometry. So there's a lot to understand actually about crop circles beside who's doing it. A lot of people want to know the immediate answer and a simple answer to who's doing it and how. BLT research team has done all the science on plants and soil, and it's not just them doing the science. They use plant biophysicists. They send samples to all different consultants, very illustrious consultants, and they've done clay mineralogy studies and X-ray diffraction studies on the soil, microscopic examinations of the cellular wall structure, and they're all altered. So they were ruling out all these things, and everybody's curiosity was ignited. Then the crop circles ratcheted up every year after that, and they were getting more and more complex. So weather theories were no longer a satisfactory explanation for what's going on with crop circles. And then people were witnessing and filming unusual light phenomena over crops of wheat. I've got my own footage of a ball of light hovering over a wheat field in daylight, like a plasma ball, breathing in and out. And I didn't see it as I was filming, I didn't see it with the naked eye. But when I got home and was looking at the footage, it was on the film. A very, like high beam ball of light. And so people were also reporting hearing musical notes in crop circles, so they've been measured, recorded in crop circles. So sound has a role to play in the creation of crop circles. Light has a role to play as well. And also people were discovering that their mobile phones weren't working inside the crop circle, their video cameras would stop, and so they thought, well, let's do some measurements with magnetometers. And they found that there was an electromagnetic field in conforming to a semi-spherical shape directly over the ear. And then the readings would drop off as you left the crop circle. And people's phones would work again and their cameras would work again. And I experienced that myself. So for 16 years now I've been researching crop circles. I started off a skeptic, and I understand people's scepticism because it's very confronting to the rational mind. You know, some friends of mine said, oh, crop circles, they can be anything between 500 and 1,000 feet in diameter. They appear overnight with no signs of human contrivance in them. And in the English summer night, have any of you been to England during the summer months? The hours of darkness are very short. It's only about 4 or 5 hours of darkness. And these crop circles appear without anybody detecting any activity in the fields. And people would rightly say, well, how do you know they appear overnight? Well, we know for a fact because ever since crop circles got international attention, the researching teams built up, and they would fly over Wiltshire in England where most of the crop circles appear, and they would map and chart all the new crop circles that appeared in pristine condition at first light in the morning. So that's how we know they do appear overnight. I went to England in 2006 and 2007. My very first day in England was startling because I just had a tent, a 2-man tent in a hire car, and all I knew was I had to head for Alton Barnes. And as I was driving through Alton Barnes, because that's where most of the famous prolific crop circles are appeared, I saw some people camped on a ridgeway, and I thought, oh, camp here. This looks like a good spot, because there were nothing but wheat fields all around. And the people who were already camped there came up to me in a high state of excitement, and they said, you won't believe what happened last night. And I said, oh, do tell, what? And they said, well, we saw a UFO. And I'm going, really? And they said, not only that, the military arrived in their helicopters as well and landed on the hill where they were camped. And all this military activity's going on, and the UFOs, and I'm going, I've only just arrived in England. Anyway, I finished pitching my tent. I had a non-disturbed sleep that night, and I'm a nurse. I'm a light sleeper, like all nurses are. Woke up in the morning and there's a new crop circle at the foot of the hill where I was camped. And I heard nothing, saw nothing. And before breakfast I went down into that field to have a look at that crop circle. And I met 2 groups of people who saw the previous night's UFOs from different locations in the area. So it wasn't only the people I was camped with, it was 2 different people I met in the crop circle who saw the UFO and saw all the military activity from different locations in the area. So it was my very first day in England, ever. And then I went again in 2007. And it was a week after the most startling crop circle event ever. It was a fractal Om symbol that arrived in Eastfield at the nearby camp. And it's the largest crop circle ever, 1,033 feet from top to bottom. And it was filmed. There was a guy who, he had a gut instinct that there was going to be an event in that field that night, because it was the 7th of the 7th, 07. 7 being a sacred number. And he set up a half a dozen cameras, high-tech cameras. He had night vision monitor running all the time, all night. And then at about 3 something in the morning, there was a flash of light like sheet lightning. And he went rushing. It was calm weather too, it wasn't a storm. went rushing to his night vision monitor, and there was this crop circle, 1,033 feet from top to bottom, which arrived in guess how many minutes? 7 minutes. So, because he had the timer on the night vision monitor, he's got the proof. It's the proof. The timing at 3:17 or something in the morning, there was nothing in the field. You could see it on the night vision monitor because the film was rolling all the time. 7 minutes later was this fractal design, and I arrived about within a week after that event, and everyone was all abuzz with excitement over this event. I went to the media conference where the local press, the national press, and all the researchers were there, and everyone. And hey, guess what? The evidence, the physical evidence, the video evidence, the proof that a crop circle, the largest ever, can appear in 7 minutes. And it only made the local paper once. But Doug and Dave, you've all heard about Doug and Dave, I bet. You've all heard about Doug and Dave, the guys with the stomping boards?
Oh, yes.
Well, their story went around the world on mainstream media. Someone had the money to pay Doug and Dave to go to New Zealand away from all the testy questions from researchers, like how do you achieve this effect, and they were making so many contradictions. They were flown to New Zealand to do debunking documentaries for a corporation. So then we had a huge debunking campaign. This is the scene in daylight, standing in their garden, and in the video you see all these plants waving gently in the wind, moving across the thing, and the lights were seen. You can see there's a bit of a hill, but there's nothing but wheat field, nothing, no dwelling or anything like that, nothing but wheat field, and the lights were appearing around this area here, around this copse of trees, and the lights were so intense that as they were going down the hill on the other side, you could still see the brilliant light from them. So when I came home and I was showing people my footage and that, I appreciate comments from detractors and sceptics, but sometimes it's a bit of a blow. But at least when they say, oh, it's this, oh, it's that, you know, I was getting people saying, oh, it's out of focus lights from a dwelling on a hill, or it's where military flares. So I got off my backside and I looked up what military flares look like. There's lots of YouTube videos about the way military flares behave. Nothing like what I found at all. And I also doubt that the military would be dropping flares on private property, on people's farmland, because this is a wheat field. Salisbury Plain is nearby. So I got off my backside and also went to the Ordnance Survey maps to find out exactly where Salisbury Plain is, because Salisbury Plain is where the military drop all their ordnance and have mine sites and things like that. They do all their war games and all that stuff. And you often hear bombs going off in the background. But it turned out Salisbury Plain is about 20 kilometres behind where I'm standing doing the filming. So it's good that I got off my backside and found out all these things, because it's an answer to the detractors and it provides evidences. You should be able to, because people have a requirement, they want the evidence, they want the scientific proof, they want, you know. So because I did that, I'm glad I did it, because this is stunning itself, because here's the B&B. I was standing in their front garden. There's the copse of trees, the wheat field, nothing but wheat field. And that's where I did the meditation, in a perfectly straight line. I couldn't believe it. The amazing thing about Acre, it's not just an incredible circle of megalithic stones, enormous megalithic stones. It's also a massive earthwork. See how it looks like a raised earthen area with a ditch all around the ridge. It's incredible. And these are some still shots from the sighting. The light was so brilliant. It's incredible. And the objects, there was up to 5 of them at one stage. And they were going from being a tight ball of intense light, so intense that it lit up the whole area, to being quite a large object with structure to it, which I'll show you in another. That's much bigger and bigger again. Then to that. And they were changing shape. They were going from that shape without altering the zoom at all. They were going from being a tight ball of intense light to something like that without changing the zoom. And people have said, well, this is a lens aberration and stuff like that, but it doesn't explain how, if it's a lens aberration, I'd like somebody, some expert to examine it professionally, but my question is, if it's a lens aberration, how could it go from that shape to a different shape? When you see the video on slow-mo, with this object here, you see something coming up from the left, and it's another object, and it orbits around that. I'll show you. I can demonstrate it in the stills. There you can see it very clearly. And again on the left, and then it comes around the back of it, and then you see it on the right. You see what I mean? And then 4, and then later a 5th. And military flares do not do lateral movement. And in the video, if you watch closely, you can see that these objects are going down the hill, down the slope of the hill. And very similar craft are being filmed in other countries around the world. The top ones they were photographed in Italy, and the bottom one's India. Costa Rica, Sri Lanka, Hong Kong, and this is just the Ordnance Survey map that demonstrates where Salisbury Plain is in relation to there. It's 21.9 miles behind me. When I came back, I wanted to throw myself more into the research of the phenomenon. I've developed a strong relationship with the BLT research team, and I went to visit the Land newspaper. It's an Australia-wide newspaper, and I wanted to speak with a journalist, and he was a really neat guy. He was very interested. He'd never heard of crop circles, and he wanted to know all about them, and I asked Nancy's BLT research team's permission to give them some photos of the evidence that's seen in plants, because what happens in the plants is the nodes of the plants, which are like the knuckles on the plant stem, elongate and stretch due to a heating process that happens in the creation of crop circles. And sometimes they get expulsion cavities in the nodes, and nothing known in nature or any man-made means can produce what's seen in the plants. And that's what has actually given the basis for the scientific evidence, which proves that hoaxing is not the answer to the phenomenon. And he wrote a very good article, actually, and I was really so chuffed with it. And then in 2012, in Burrawa, near Yass, in New South Wales, there was a crop circle that appeared in wheat. And I went racing down there to investigate, and Lorraine and Dom linked me because Nancy Talbot of the BLT research team told me how to take the samples and what to do, how to treat them, and send them over to the United States. And Lorraine lent me a a magnetometer so that I could test for electromagnetic anomalies. I had a huge magnet because there are magnetic particles in the soil. I wanted to collect them. I wanted to collect soil samples and wheat samples, and I was so excited. And it's a beautiful crop circle. It was two ancient sacred symbols in one, derived from the flower of life geometry. There's Vesica Pisces, which is two overlapping spheres. And in the centre of the Vesica Pisces, what they call the God's Eye, is the seed of life. And that's derived from the flower of life as well, a very profound symbol of transformation and new birth and new everything, which has been talked about by all our ancient indigenous cultures, about the times that we're in now as being a time of tremendous change and transformation as well. We're seeing tremendous change and transformation, a dimensional shift according to a lot of... At this time now, we're at the end of the Mayan calendar, and the Mayan calendar was never about the end of the world. It's never what the Mayans said the Mayan calendar is all about, but that is another talk. We're at the end of the Kali Yuga to the Hindus. We're in the age of Aquarius. We're in the fifth world of peace to the Hopi Indians, and we're in the fifth psalm to the Mayans, and they all talk about this being a time of tremendous, a leap in human consciousness, and we're seeing that. We're in it. We can also see that we're in a dimensional shift. We're seeing ET, UFO, wanting to be seen now. And I went down to Burua to investigate this crop circle, and I wanted to find out, speak with the owners of the land and ask their permission if I could take some samples in their company, you know. And the guy, he said, I'm not going to give you permission to go on the land, not even to photograph up close the stems. Even that would be enough. Just to photograph the stems would have been enough to show that this is not a hoaxed phenomenon, not this one. And I was very disappointed. He said, someone's got in there with a mower. Fortunately, the crop circle could be seen from the road, so I got a ladder and put it up on the side of the road. And there I was, like a loony, up on top of the ladder with my video camera. And then I thought, I'm going to go and see if I can get a crop duster or a helicopter or someone in a microlight to fly over it. And I spoke with the local, a guy called Roscoe Williams, who didn't agree to take me up, but he hadn't heard about crop circles, and I was telling him all about it. He was patiently listening and he was intrigued, and he decided a day or two after that he would go up in his microlight, and he took the only aerial photographs of this crop circle and published it to the Crop Circle Connector website. And I'm going to show you the images. But a week after he did that, he went along to the Yas newspaper and said, was telling them about it. And he said, as he was flying over the crop circle, guess what? His camera failed. His camera failed, and he had to fly to a higher altitude and do another circle, and his camera worked then. But luckily, that was inserted into the article, that comment. He didn't realise that that is a signature of the genuine phenomenon, because what often happens is that field, that site where the crop circle was, the following year, the crop that has been planted for the next season will grow differently to all the surrounding crop. And I said, keep an eye on it and do take some pictures. Well, he not only did that, he not only took some still pictures the following year, he took some video. And when he didn't see anything with the naked eye, but when he looked at home frame by frame, he videoed rods. Have you heard of rods? They're like rods, shooting really fast through the sky. You wouldn't see it with the naked eye, too fast. But he, with painstaking effort and spending a lot of time, he slowed everything down, frame by frame, examining it, and you should see the stuff that he's got. Not only rods, but strange, not quite in this physical dimension, objects coming out of the ground. I reckon there's a portal there. And now, with Steve, wherever he goes, He's filming orbs and all sorts of strange things, and UFOs. He came as a support person to me for several of my talks, and he's been a tremendous support and help. And we were doing a talk in Cooma, down in the snowy country. And Steve just walks out in the tea break with his video camera and just randomly in the sky. And when he goes to examine the footage, there's a UFO he captured just in a space of a few minutes. And there, in the sky you could see like a cloud. It looks like a cloud, but it's unusual because it's circular, perfectly circular cloud. And then it turns into this bright light and elongates and intense light, and then goes chomp like that. So Australia, according to Colin Andrews' catalogue, has had 70 odd crop circles, but probably more. But our wheat growing areas are very remote, and we're all normal in Australia. Nothing abnormal happens to normal people in Australia. Here is the Borua crop circle. And viewing it from the road, there you can see that there's no trails going into the field. There's no. The farmer said, "Oh, someone got in there with a mower and did it." But I'm going to demonstrate to you. It would be near impossible to get a mower over the barbed wire fence, which goes as high as your chest, to get into there without making a trail into it and all that sort of thing. And if it was mown, you'd have shards of wheat everywhere. And to do this, the beautiful petals of the flower with such accuracy with a mower is... There's a ground shot.
Is this what you took this time?
No, I think it was Julie Bedford. Got into the field and took... I'm not sure if it was Julie Bedford.
Is this hers?
Someone got into the field without permission and took that ground shot. There's the site where it was, quite close to the road, but I've got this photo in it because it's got that tree there to identify the site. And not only have you got a barbed wire fence with only very narrow space between each barbed wire layer, there is also a steep bank to climb up to get the mower over the fence.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
See that tree which identifies where we're looking tree? And I took this photo so you can see the top barbed wire comes up to my shoulder. Which the hidden geometry in the crop circles is significant in itself. That's part of the incredible mystery. It's not just a pretty picture we're looking at. We've got hidden geometry which has meaning and esoteric significance, which after all the secret societies are very immersed in the Knights Templar and the Khazars and the Masons. And all this esoteric knowledge is hidden from us. But I've had people say to me, "Oh, if you think this is some higher intelligence trying to communicate with us, why don't they just give us something in English?" Well, I reckon this is a perfect way to communicate with us, and this is actually what they're doing. They're communicating with us in a universal language of mathematics and frequency and vibration, and using everything from higher realms to activate our own awakening in consciousness. This is all based on the flower of life geometry. Flower of life geometry is so profound. All the platonic solids and all the sacred symbols emerge, and everything in creation on this physical plane emerges out of this geometry. We emerged out of the flower of life geometry. If you look at embryology, the cell division and everything, it's all flower of life. Now, last year there was a crop circle in Tilba near Narooma. Well, it hasn't been proven that it's a genuine one. There were two very small ones in grass, and crop circles have appeared in grasses and in any sort of crop at all, and even in snow and ice. But the term crop circle was coined when they were just simple circles, and of course they're not just circles. I was fascinated with this one because in the newspaper article it talks about the way it fans out from a central point out into an almost perfect circle, who added that the ends of some of the grass seem to be dead. Now, that's because of the superheating that goes on in a genuine crop circle, but it doesn't affect the health of the plant, despite that seemingly traumatic event, because it had the heat affecting is a significant part of it. So I'm going down there at the end of this month to investigate it and see what I can find out from the locals. But it had a beautiful centrepiece, beautifully swirled and laid, and the centrepiece is like a little bit like a vase of flowers. This is a beautiful quote from John Anthony West. "We cannot describe or define harmony in rational terms, but we react to it. This is what makes crop circles a beautiful way to communicate. And to its absence, we react to it instinctively. This reaction is characterised by an unmistakable sense of equilibrium. Harmony evokes in us an instinctive awareness of, and even longing for, the unity from which harmony derives. Harmony is the recall to unity. Art is based upon harmonic principles and arouses in us a sense of unity and of the cosmic and divine order. And that is the whole purpose of crop circles in a nutshell. It's calling us to unity. It's giving us symbols that have been sacred and meaningful to mankind throughout human history, starting with the Neolithic. It's like an intelligence that's saying, look guys, we know everything about you. We know that we've been watching you throughout your history, and you're all talking about the same things. Find the things that you have in commonality. All the cultures have in commonality. And actually, because they're reminding us of our ancient heritage, we can actually arrive at the wisdoms that the ancients had, and we're actually still clawing our way out of the dark ages compared to the knowledge and wisdom that the ancients had, their connectedness to nature, their connectedness to all living things. And in fact, they believed that there was no such thing as a dead thing. Everything has spirit and everything is connected, and that's how all the ancients understood, and that's where we need to return to. And this is what the crop circles are reminding us of over and over again. And there's this one shop, if you noticed, you can't walk into any bookshop and you'll see a book on crop circles. You don't see the images anywhere. And that, in my opinion, is deliberate. They deliberately are hiding the full beauty and wonder of this phenomenon. We never see the images. The only thing we see in the newspapers or on the news is debunking. And it's nothing to worry. How many people even know that there's been 12,000 of them globally? 12,000 crop circles globally since the mid-70s. But there were shards everywhere on the ground, so he picked up the shards and he thought, this is really strange. Shards of wood. And he took photos of it, and as he was taking photos of it, all these orbs were appearing in this site. And so then he started getting scientists interested, and people have been visiting him from all over Australia.
Really?
Because no matter, you can go there any night and you will take pictures of this kind. This is in his backyard. Well, look at this enormous orb.
Yeah.
You can't say that's a bit of dust. And all the others. And this is in his backyard. He welcomes people to come and visit him, and he'll tell you the story and he'll show you all the pictures.
That's Mount Riverview, right?
Mount Riverview, yeah.
Okay.
And this kind of thing, it was a clear night, and because we're all there taking random shots everywhere and getting stuff, it was no barbecue, wasn't foggy, absolutely clear night. 1 second it was this, the next second it was that.
So this wasn't visible to the naked eye. This only
It wasn't
came out-
visible to the naked
This only
eye.
came out when you actually looked at it.
Yeah. You can see that's exactly the same spot. And then another one, you can see that that tree on the right. The very next second, it was that. It's got all this stuff on it.
That almost looks like a figure in the middle.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that.
Like a head and shoulders.
But it's just amazing. I mean, that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. And this is another one of a friend and I. We were in Bellingen. We're going to the river in Bellingen, and my friend gets really upset when she sees planes with chemtrails. And there was this plane making chemtrails everywhere, and she wound the window down and she said, I'm going to take photos, I'm going to go to the local paper. And when she looked at the photos more closely,
Yeah.
and there, two UFOs. And UFOs are often filmed around chemtrails.
Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Damien's done.
Damien,
He's
yeah.
just sent me one, Damien, of one flying through a chemtrail.
Yeah.
Whether they're trying to clean it
Yeah,
or
Ameliorate
just
it.
study it, I'm not sure.
I think they're monitoring. And
They
for
certainly-
Oh, well,
sure.
they're definitely monitoring.
Yeah.
And this is when I was finding a hall for Stephen Bassett to speak in the mountains. A beautiful orb there.
That was in the mountains,
Yeah, Blackheath.
in Blackheath.
Blackheath Community Centre. My girlfriend's dog. This was sent to me from a friend in Perth. This is the Pinnacles Desert in West Australia. A huge, beautiful couple of orbs there. And this is my brother's dog. My brother's dog, he's pure love. He's just adorable, this dog. And see the orbs?
Oh yeah.
And this is a waterfall down the end of my street where I live. They're, you know, I know what droplets of water look like around the waterfall. These are self-luminous orbs, these ones. Can you see the blue orb at the Opera House? It's
But-
right over at this lady's chest. I don't know how to zoom in on that. Where this was for Handel's Messiah. We went to the Handel's Messiah. And the BLT research team's website has got amazing stuff on this Dutch guy called Robert Vandenbroeke, who is a super psychic. He's got avataristic qualities. He's been psychic all his life and he's had paranormal experiences, and he knows when and where crop circles are going to be, and he can draw what the design's going to be beforehand, and he gets a sense, and he certainly knows when all the ones in Holland are going to appear. And he takes the most incredibly anomalous photographs. And a lot of scientists have gone out with him in the fields because he's got quite a reputation now. And it doesn't matter what camera he's holding, or anyone in his company with using their camera can take photos and anomalous things will. So visit the website under Robert Vandenbroeke, you'll be amazed. This particular event, Robert was going out into the fields with some media. They were going to make a documentary on him. And one of the cameramen said, "Here, use my camera, it's got a new chip in it." And, you know, he was a bit sceptical, see what you can do with my camera. And he was standing right beside Robert when he took this photo, and he just was shocked because in the full frame was this indigo ET face. And he's got even more bizarre things than this. And this is in daylight.
And this was taken in Netherlands?
This one, I think, was in England, these shots.
So that's a Zeta Reticula. Yeah.
And these are photos from the BLT research team's website too.
Were those visible to the naked eye? Or did
No.
they? Okay, so they only showed up on the film.
Yeah. If you've got a digital camera, there's a way of testing it to see if it will be a camera that will take pictures of orbs. If you've got a television remote, turn your camera on, turn your remote on, and if looking through the viewfinder, if you see the remote flash, your camera will be able to take pictures of orbs. So get out there and don't just go out in the commercial breaks. Just, spend a bit of time and intention and all that sort of thing, and get into your heart space and get out there and take photos.
Can I ask you though about orbs? Because, people say that these are actual spiritual beings.
Mm.
So, what I'm hearing from you is that there's a connection with UFOs, or these could be extraterrestrials.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of video. I don't know if you watch a lot of UFO videos, but there are some UFOs that are actually light ships.
Right.
And they're expelling orbs. Yeah. And have you heard of the Dorothy Isaac story? No. This lady is a 70-odd-year-old lady who'd been filming UFOs for 30 years, and she kept it all under her hat because in those days, she was treated like, even by her own family. It's kind of sad. Mm-hmm. And but she came out with it, and she was using an old Super 8 movie camera, and which you can't fiddle with and alter or. And her story is amazing. She's not only videoing UFOs, she's also had visitations from light beings, and she's also had, she was videoing, her daughter was being interviewed by a documentary filmmaker in the kitchen. And when the videographer took the film home to look at closely, there was a UFO in the window of the kitchen behind her. And as she moved her head, the UFO went over like this. They know just exactly how to place themselves to be seen. There's an omnipresent intelligence. But not only that, she was very nervous for the interview, very nervous. You could see the neck muscles tensed. Because she was one of the ones who was very sceptical of her mother for years, And she was being interviewed because this was her first sighting, and she then started to believe her mother. So she was being interviewed, she was describing what she saw. And as she was speaking, an orb came into the shot and went past her throat chakra, and you could see her just melt. Like that. It was incredible. You can see it in slow-mo.
Where did this take place?
In Canada. So a lady that was just in the audience of one of my talks, and it's amazing, Margaret has also shared with me some amazing orb pictures, one that she's even videoed, and they look amazing, and they're just everywhere. Physicists now, as I was saying, they're interfacing with mysticism, and they're talking about 12 dimensions, multiple realities, and that there could be, if you've heard of string theory, they're saying that there could be whole invisible worlds right next to us, just on a different frequency. Just like you could tweak the dial on your radio and you'd be in another world. Basically, is what they're saying. How mystical is that sounding? And this is a really good book written by Michael Ledwith, and a guy that's really into all the technicalities of cameras. And in this book it shows you how you can tell the difference between what's lens artefact and what's some problem with your focus, and what real orbs are. And this guy, Michael Ledwith, is taking photography like this. He recommends that people go into the same spot each day and do their photography, and he said now he's been taking thousands and thousands of photos, and now he can see this stuff with the naked eye. He can. And you can see vortexes forming, and we're in a dimensional shift.
Where is this?
This guy's American, and this is his book. The Orb Project.
Maybe my laptop's got a DVD.
Oh, well, I can play DVDs. If we've got time, I'll be able to. This is Steve's backyard.
So these are all orbs.
Yeah, they're all orbs, they're not stars. Steve is the friend I met in Burua, and now suddenly he's got, no matter where he points his camera, even if at the moon, I want to show you his moon stuff. So he's got the amount of serendipities that occur around him are amazing. Like, we were in the city going to the UFO group meeting in Sydney, in the city. And I said, Steve, why don't you get yourself a really good camera, because he's starting to take some interesting photos. So he walked into a shop across the road and came out with this camera that happens to be the Rolls Royce and he's able to do the most amazing things and videos of the moon's surface so clear, objects leaving the moon's surface. And when I show people, they say, what sort of a telescope have you got? They said, no, it's not a telescope, it's a camera.
So they want him to see this?
Yes,
to pass
they
on
do.
basically.
They turn up for him somehow. It's and I don't know about you, but in that bottom left one, I can see a face. His parents have recently passed away. But you know how I was talking about what the ancients prophesy for these times are a time of human transformation, quantum leap in human consciousness, new human. Well, there were a series of crop circles about our DNA changing from a 2-strand to a 3-strand and even more, as you can see from these images of crop circles. And of course this beautiful butterfly, the Vitruvian man, which conforms to the sacred geometry, transforming into a butterfly. Scientists have been writing a lot about what's happening with our sun. Our sun has been behaving in unprecedented ways. Deep within the hidden core of our life-giving star, never before seen particles or some mysterious force is being shot at from the sun, and it's hitting Earth. Whatever it is, the evidence suggests it's affecting all matter. Alarmed, physicists first became aware of this threat over the past several years. Initially dismissed as an anomaly, but now frantic scientists are shooting emails back and forth to colleagues across the world, attempting to grasp exactly what is happening to the sun. Something impossible has happened, yet the impossible has been proven to be true. Laboratories around the globe have confirmed that the rate of radioactive decay, once thought to be a constant and a bedrock of science, is no longer a constant. So things are actually changing in physical matter. Something being emitted from the sun is interacting with matter in strange and unknown ways, with the startling potential to dramatically change the nature of the very Earth itself. That is really awesome. And interestingly, all our ancient indigenous cultures worshipped the sun. They understood the sun to be the great engine of evolution, and that's very central to the Mayan understandings, the Hopi Indian, the Mithray culture in ancient Persia, Japanese, the Chinese. They had their sun gods, and they worshipped the sun for good reason. The Mayan calendar is all about our sun and the sun in the galactic centre, Hunab-Ku. Now, there's been a lot of crop circles which I think are illustrating like a meiosis thing happening, like cell division, like the new Earth forming. And one particular year, I think it was 2010 or 11, there were a series of these crop circles of a similar kind of design, and it looks like cellular division, where the tension between polarities is increasing, which is we can see in human consciousness, and the geopolitical events. Huge polarising thing happening, where you're getting a separation, a division of frequencies, and the one down the bottom on the right looks almost like this is a chromosomal division happening within a cell. and they're separating. And
Doesn't that look like a language that's written?
yes, there's some glyphs around there too.
I thought it was some
Yeah,
sort of
you're
message
right.
clearly written.
Yeah. And then at the next crop circle, you can see the 3D thing coming through. Then, this is so juicy. Remember, I went to the talk at Harvey Bay and Mary Rodwell was talking there and I was talking, and it was called the New Earth Symposium. And when I saw these, I thought I've got to include these crop circles in it. And before I left to get to my flight, I pulled a book off the bookshelf randomly. What am I going to read on the plane? And it happened to be Drunvalo Melchizedek's book on the ancient secret of the flower of life. And on the plane, I randomly opened it up to this page that had this diagram on it. And I thought, oh my God, that's this crop circle. And guess what this is all about in Drunvalo? Have you heard of Drunvalo Melchizedek's book on the ancient secret of the flower of life? He talks about the dimensional shift and he talks about sacred geometry and obviously the flower of life. And this diagram here is a symbol. Rotating the second level square 45 degrees bridges the second and third levels of consciousness. I was so excited when I saw that because this is all about the leap in the consciousness that we're going into, and here it is in a crop circle. And I only got that connection on the plane on the way to my presentation. Then the New Earth, this is like a pregnancy coming through. It's amazing. They started archiving them from the sort of mid-70s. Colin Andrews, a team of researchers got together with a meteorologist, Terence Mead and Colin Andrews and Pat Delgado, and they started measuring them and cataloguing them and archiving them. And when they started doing that, the whole phenomenon took off, and then it got the attention of the whole world and the media too. Like in their early days of the phenomenon, the researchers were treated like celebrities, you know, and the media followed them around like puppies, and then all of a sudden the clamps went on and it was they had to control the situation because everyone was streaming into England from all over the world, and they, because of all the anomalous things that were happening around it as well, all the paranormal things, balls of light and UFOs, you know, all this kind of thing. They wanted to control the whole situation, so they had a very elaborate and very strong debunking campaign happening. I heard of the work of Carl Jung, the famous psychologist. His whole life was devoted to the power of symbol as a way of communicating, and to our subconscious, to our inner child, to our higher self, the whole gamut.
You're talking about the linear psychology?
And we don't need to get it with the mind.
No.
And there are many people who give us wonderful insights, but what each individual gets out of it is the important thing, and it can be different to others. They're lending a voice to every culture and tradition. They're showing us their wisdoms. There is so much to learn from them. It's breathtaking. And I'll give you another brilliant example of how there's an interactiveness between human consciousness. I gave you a couple, but I'll give you one, a brilliant one. And it was right in the aftermath of Doug and Dave coming out in the media and saying they've done them all with stomping boards. After that, coming out in the media and then getting more attention, came a crop circle that was in a script. It wasn't something in English, but it was obviously a script. It wasn't a pretty picture, but they gave this script to a bunch of scholars to decipher. And it was in post-Augustinian Latin. And it says, we oppose acts of craft and cunning. That's what the translation was.
It was in Latin.
Why was it in Latin?
No, it was in Latin.
Yeah, it was in Latin. We oppose acts of craft and cunning.
So do you think that we're going to see more, just from your wealth of knowledge, do you think that in the future, in our time, we're going to see more direct messages as
there have been more. Yeah.
As there are definitely opposing forces, not only in the ethos, but there's opposing forces in human opposing forces.
Okay.
Do you think that we're going to get secret, direct information given to people who are awake enough to and receptive enough to take it on board and share it, do something with the information?
I can recommend, this would be about the best book written on crop circles, by Freddie Silver, and it's called Secret in the Fields. I'll give you another really glaring example of an obvious communication. And it's an amazing 3D image of a grey, an alien holding a disc. And on the disc is a series of dots, dashes. And a brilliant researcher by the name of Paul Vijay discovered that this was ASCII computer language. And he decoded it. And guess what it says? Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. And guess what year that was? 2002. 2002.
2002.
Because there has to be a definite, Meagan, there has to be a definite, these civilizations are extremely advanced. Also, we could never even comprehend how advanced they are.
Oh, and by the way, Paul Vijay was found floating dead in a river not long after that.
Was found floating dead.
Yes.
Oh, the
I suppose suicide.
Meagan, what about the Arecibo?
Oh, yes. That's an obvious communication.
Yeah, and then it came back
In 1974, SETI, remember, sent a message into outer space just aimed at star cluster M13, a message in binary code saying here we are on planet Earth, and it had all this information on planet Earth, our decimal system, to code on DNA, the numbers of nucleotides in our DNA, the population value on Earth, the position of our planet in the solar system. We are now the third planet from our sun, all that information, and we are communicating to you via the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico, with all the dimensions and that, all in binary code. And in 1989, we got an answer. We got an answer in binary code, in a crop circle, pointing directly at the Chilbolton radio telescope in England, pointing directly at our radio telescope. And it was in the same format. It was like a reply from an ET race. And it said, it had some different things, like the elements on their planet included silicon. Silicon-14 was added into their table of elements, a much larger population value on their planet. And the information on their star system was, we exist on 3 planets, third from our star, with 3 moons. And the most amazing part of that reply was down the bottom, where in our format we said we are communicating to you via the Chilbolton radio telescope. They had a fractal array of what looks like 2 quantum entangled particles. We are communicating to you using a technology that involves quantum entanglement. And if you know anything about quantum entanglement, the implications of that are that they could be on the other side of the solar system and manipulating matter on Earth from way out there. I mean, they're so far more advanced. Why aren't these people being made world famous for their prodigious art? It's not some, it is genius. We've been getting crop circles that are like sculptures. The anatomy of a single cell, the intellectual profile of whoever's doing this is astounding. And, why don't we see the images? Why aren't... You get some nutter artist wrapping up coastlines in drapes, and books are published all over the world because, why aren't these people being made famous? Why aren't they well known? Why don't we see books on them? There's so many questions.